When I got my first promotion after I moved to the United States, I was working for a company who had hired a local TV personality to work as the sales manager. And he was very good at his job. He and I became friends, and one day we were talking, and he told me something that took years to register. And I wish I could go back in time, sit myself down as I left his office and say, go back in there. Take half an hour to listen to what Bobby is trying to tell you, because has the potential to save you a world of hurt in your new role. Now, I've been promoted at every company I've stayed at longer than 6 months. But for some reason or another, historically, I always had trouble in getting the promotion to stick to avoid getting into trouble in my new role. And before I tell you about what Bobby said and the years it took me to figure out what he actually meant, I'm going to tell you a little about my background. And the first thing I want to tell you is I don't have a degree, a college degree, and that's relevant. Though I was quite smart at school, I didn't apply myself like I should have, so I aced the high school exams, failed the A-level exams, which is the first step to going to university in England. Then I worked as a night caregiver for my disabled father for nearly a decade. It was rewarding work, but it didn't progress me up any career ladder. After I got married, I found daytime work in the real world and started a pattern of joining a company as a technician, no qualification so to speak of, and working my way up into a supervisory role. And not that I noticed it for years, but I always seemed to get stuck at that supervisory junior management kind of position. And this doesn't seem to be too uncommon in the industries I worked in. I remember at one of the companies, I accepted a supervisory role. One of the lads told me, nice knowing you, you'll be gone in 6 months, which was pretty accurate when winter layoffs came. Now, what Bobby had said to me was, I really like you, but I wish you would be more careful about what you're doing. To which I said, I'll be careful. Now, what he was saying, though, and it took me years to understand this, was you have ability, you have potential, but there are a number of your behaviors that are going to cost you your job unless you change them. So, years later, when I was older, wiser, I started to understand what he meant. There is a big difference between performing as a top technician and performing as a supervisor. And like I said, I think a biggest part of this, or a large part of it, is not going to college. My highest academic qualification here in America is a GED, which I walked into the test. I aced it first time. And then raising a family, as well as working full time, being involved in church ministry, has meant so far I haven't tried to get a degree of any kind. I really believe that going through a degree program prepares you in some way for a different style of working. So I asked myself the question, what are the things that a degree helps you with? How does it give you a head start in certain positions? So I talked to a number of people who'd made the same transition that I'd made, going into management without a degree, but with more success than I had. I talked to managers who promoted people like me. And as I talked to them, a picture started to form of the changes that are needed in order to successfully transition from a technician to a supervisor, from an hourly paid employee to a salary paid employee. And so I would like to tell you about the 7 necessary changes you have to consider if you get promoted in that kind of way, or even if you're thinking of promoting someone in this way. So let's go through the 7 things we have to consider. 3 of them are personal changes, and 4 of them are about the way your relationship with your employees and your co-workers change. So first of all, personal, your job changes. Now that's obvious, but it's not necessarily immediately obvious how it's changed. The biggest change is that it's no longer focused on tasks. It's now focused on goals. And if you can't tell the difference, you're going to end up in trouble because your hard work will not achieve success. You will fail. Second, your habits have to change. The way you organize your life, the way you behave. There's no one telling you what to do all day. You have to find ways to fill your days to avoid distractions. A third thing is your skill set needs to change. As a technician, you need to know how to operate tools and equipment to do your job. Now you're going to need to know how to run a computer. You need to know how to communicate with people. You need to know how to touch type. And there's probably some other custom program that your company uses. So that's as far as your own changes. What about relation changes? There are 4 significant ways that that's changed. First of all, your peer group is no longer the top technicians. You've gone to the bottom of the management group, and office politics are real, and you're the newcomer and outside of all the political groups. Next, your relationship with the technicians, that level that you've just left, has changed. And remember, just as you always knew better than your supervisor, everyone you supervise knows better than you. So how do you transition from being a friend to being a supervisor? Okay, so the next change that you have to consider is your boss has different expectations of you as now. He wants you to be able to make good choices in bad situations, and he wants you to be able to explain the stories that are behind the headlines that he hears. And the last group of people, and this does depend on the industry, are the customers. The people that you used to pass off to your manager are now going to get passed off to you. And some of them are genuinely crazy. How do you deal with them? So we're going to look at a few of these topics in a little more detail. We don't have too much time left. But when you invite me back, every topic is worth at least an hour. And we can spend a little longer. But let's go through a couple of them just to get an idea of the overview. Let's talk about your job, tasks to goals, because the way you did things, the way you worked, your attitude, your intelligence, your good looks and English accent, proved to your boss that you are capable of more, and more has come your way. However, some of the things that make you stand out at one level can turn into problems at the next level. And it was a while before I understood the difference between this. Because when you're working as a technician, you're going from task to task to task. You start by preparing the truck in the morning. You go and do one business. You go and do a residence home. You go and do Kermit's job, then Miss Piggy's job. And then you come back to base. You break down the truck. You turn in your paperwork. The job is done. Task to task to task. But as a supervisor, you're charged with goals. So your goals are make sure all the work is finished today, make sure all the paperwork is submitted properly, make sure overtime is kept under control. So the work is unending, and you have to decide how much you do each day and when to stop. And if you're still thinking in the terms of completing tasks, not only will you work all day, but you'll also fail at your goals and lose your job. So you need to be clear on what your goals are and plan how to achieve them, and stop working each day when you've done enough to meet your goals. So as an example of this, as a technician, I was always the last person on our crew to leave work. I was responsible for truck maintenance, for equipment maintenance. So I would be the first one in, checking the truck, making sure everything was ready. I'd go through the day. At the end of the day, I would break down the truck. I would make sure everything was ready for the next day, and that was my responsibility, first in, last out. And I carried this over to when I became an assistant manager in a mowing company, where I waited for the last crew to come back. Task mentality. So not only did this do nothing as far as meeting my goals, it didn't get me any bonus points with my boss or with my wife or with my family. It was carryover from task-based work that was, well, it was toxic to my personal life and to my chances of success. And so unless you can tell the difference, and I think really the difference comes when you're at high school, you're told, go to this class, go to this class, go to this class, go to this exam. And you're given assignments that you have to hand in. And so basically you're spoon-fed the things that you need to do in order to achieve success. And it's very much like a technician. You're given a list of things to do, tasks to do. When you go on a degree course, well, I've heard some professors who have talked and said, well, you just need to go to lecture 3 and lecture 7. Those are the vital ones. It's up to you how many of the other ones you attend. Here are the assignments. Here are the due dates on the assignments. And the exam is on this date, and you need to be prepared for that. And so it doesn't matter how many classes you go to. It matters the end result. It's goal-based working. And I think that mentality is something that carries over into the workplace, because a degree, as one person said to me, a degree is just a check mark that this person can be taught and this person can meet a goal. And so that's very handy when you're in the workplace. So let's talk about your skill set. Actually, let's talk about your habits for a while, because there are other things that can be troublesome to your chance of success. You have to realize the habits you had the day before as a top technician are not the ones that you're going to need as a member of junior management. So as an example, at the end of my day as a technician, with all my tasks completed, happy customers left behind, meander into the office, talk to my manager. He always had time for me. Talk to the different office staff. Talk to the boss of the company. They always made me feel welcome, listened to what I had to say, made me feel like I was a trusted member, valued my opinion. Basically, he kept me happy with him. As soon as I was promoted, attitude kind of changed, because I was no longer the top dog tech money producing machine. I'd become an inexperienced, know-nothing member of junior management, and he wasn't really paying me to sit and talk with him. And so that habit of talking to people became an issue. You have to change that. When you're working, when you're filling your own day, and that's one of the important habits that you have to find. You have the opportunity to talk to people as much or as little as you like. And talking can become a detriment to achieving those goals, because taking time to talk to people can fuddle your mind as to achieving actual goals. So you need to change your habits. There's another power tactic that technicians have, and it comes from the power to annoy. It's a major factor in all relationships. If you like, all your manager has on you or over you is the power to annoy you. He can't kill you, he can't beat you, but he can annoy you, he can fire you. And that's kind of annoying, because you have to get a new job. But you also have the power, in a small way, to annoy him back, which most technicians do by complaining about the way things are and how they don't appreciate the stupidity of the tasks they're asked to handle. And this can form into a habit of complaining as a way to influence your assignments. And it's not a good habit to carry forward into a salary position because you're not being paid to complain. And again, just personal appearance is important as well. I remember I started hanging around the office after working as crew leader in grounds maintenance in the middle of summer. After a few weeks of doing this, my supervisor brought me a gift, a bar of deodorant. Apparently, there'd been some complaints from the ladies in the office about the aroma of grass and sweat and oil that I was bringing in. So there are different expectations in the office to the way you dress and even the way you smell. So make sure you're in the habit of dressing appropriately for the office situation you find yourself in. Another habit that we'll touch on briefly, last one, it's important to remember that you're now in a position where you can be dealing with confidential material. You have to have maturity to handle. You can gossip as a technician, it's not going to affect too much. But get in the habit of not gossiping, get in the habit of never writing, emailing, or texting anything that you wouldn't want your boss to read or those around you to read. Be careful how you talk to everyone and what you talk to them about. So that's a couple of things on the personal side. The last thing, well, relationships within the company. Now, it's been said, and I think it's very true, the biggest problem you'll have to deal with your whole life will be the people you have to work with. They're far more complicated than the worst technical challenge you could ever face. So as an example of this, or just to illustrate the point, did you know there are more neuron connections in a single human brain than there are stars in the known universe? Every person you come across is an extremely complicated connection of emotions, history, motivations. And into this bundle, you're trying to produce directions, changes, conflicts of opinion and interest, and expect people to remain cool and calm with all that going on. But, there are four main areas of changes: the people you work with, the people you used to work with, your boss, the people you work for, and your customers, the people you work for. And let's have a think about the people you now work with. Because moving up in a company usually means changing the main base of work from, say, a truck to an office. Your new peers, the people you're working with, they're people in junior management like yourself. However, you're the new kid on the block. And broadly speaking, you have two kinds of people at your level: the newbies, like you, and the slackers. This is because the position you've entered is usually an entry-level position for someone with a degree. Your commitment at the hourly level has earned you a promotion, but only a promotion to the top level, but the bottom of the top level. And those at the bottom, especially if they've been there for a while, are at the limit of their ability. Their education is keeping them in their position. They may not have the ambition or ability to climb into higher level positions, and they're keeping their position by doing enough to get by, not making any waves, and not upsetting anyone around them. And it's because for most of the time you're hired for your skills, you're fired because of who you upset. And in order to survive, they play a game called office politics, and you have to learn something of this. And you have to realize why you've gone from being the top technician to the bottom of the pile. Your own personal motivations and drives haven't changed, and this drive can cause you problems. For example, you have to be careful helping others on projects that don't relate to your goals. You can end up failing everyone, and if you fail everyone, you won't keep your position long. So, we're running out of time here. Going back to the beginning, I'm sure Bobby wanted to share some of these tips with me to help me out. I think he would have liked me to change my attitude with the customers, not necessarily the outside customers, but the internal customers within the company that I had, as well as stop asking for projects when I was having trouble meeting my goals. And if I could have a time machine, I would go back and I would talk to myself about these 7 things. The change from tasks to goals and how that affects the habits I'd formed over the years, the new skills I'd need to learn, especially when dealing with other people, and the change of relationships within the company, the new peer group, the old peer group, my boss and my customers. But I think the next best thing is to try and put something together, which is what I'm doing today, to help other people get a leg up, because I think there are some fantastic people with a ton of ability who never got a degree, who have the drive, the ambition, the intelligence, the skills to get ahead and be promoted, but maybe don't have the experience that came from getting a degree. Of course, there are many ways to expand this. We haven't even gone through all 7 of the areas in great detail, and I'd be happy to break them down for you, but I think that's enough for today. Thank you very much.